Okay. And we did do a little bit of introductions. I did not introduce myself yet, but I will in one moment. So, welcome everybody to FinAid Friday. We host these every other Friday. Um, and there is this QR code over here on the left where you can sign in. So, I do ask that you do that. And then also, again, if you have questions, we have a little Q&A function in Zoom, which you can ask your questions there. And then we will be getting to those throughout the presentation. We do have a few folks from housing here, and then I'm specifically from financial aid, but we will be able to answer any of your questions that pertain to anything related to housing or financial aid, hopefully within this session. So let's go ahead and go on forward. So my name is Joseph Toro. I am a financial aid counselor here at SFSU. And like I said, this presentation is just going to be about financial aid and as it pertains to housing specifically. So these are just some of the things we're going to be covering, specifically on-campus housing inquiries, and then how to see your housing fees. So you should be able to get a good idea of how to know exactly what it is that you owe, and then also how your financial aid relates to that. So how much you may have to pay out of pocket, how to avoid paying anything out of pocket, all that kind of stuff, along with the disbursement process and how that works, and then how to know if you're covered, and then just some reminders at the end and a few changes as well, because this upcoming aid year is going to be a little bit different than some of the previous ones. So in a second, I'll ask Alyssa to speak a little bit just about some of the housing financial contact info. But just for us, just so you know right now, you want to make sure that you do a FAFSA. That is kind of the first step in securing financial aid, and then hopefully having your housing charges offset by that aid. So we ask that you see if you are eligible to do the FAFSA or the CATA, and then you have these two big, beautiful QR codes here for you to go to studentaid.gov or California Student Aid Commission's website and see if you can fill out those applications. The cost of attendance is all the way over on the right there. That will essentially show you what is essentially an estimate of the expenses that students might end up paying out of pocket when it comes to attending SFSU. So we budget out all kinds of estimated expenses like transportation, food, and then housing is of course on there. And it's not a bill. Those are not fees that are going to show up on your account. You have to pay them. It is an estimated budget that is giving you an idea of what you can take out in terms of the max amount in loans. So use that as kind of a guide as to maybe some of the expenses that you didn't consider before. And then, of course, everybody's budget is going to be different. But Alyssa, would you like to speak a little bit about housing financials?
Definitely. Yeah. Hi, all. I just introduced myself a couple minutes ago,
Mhm.
but for people who joined a little later, my name is Alyssa and I work for Housing Financial Services here. If you're having more general housing inquiries about like move-in and stuff like that, you can definitely talk to our housing department. We have their contact information right here, housing@sfsu.edu, and there is also their phone number. But for our department specifically, Housing Financials, we can talk to you and help you out with questions about how to make payments, what the payment due dates are, and general more of understanding like how installments work for housing. Questions like that, we are happy to help. Me and my coworker Jordan, we are always here, and you can talk to us by email at housingfinancials@sfsu.edu. But you can also send us a phone call at 415-405-2200, and we'll be happy to talk with you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and move on to something that is very, very important, how to actually view your housing fees. So hopefully you all would know how to get to your gateway and then your student center within the gateway. So your student center is really like the hub of where everything is and everything that you would need to know as it pertains to your account, which includes like financial aid and your charges. So right in the middle of your student center, you'll see this section that says finances. And under this section, there is specifically this account summary. And you'll see a due now and a future due section. So just by looking at this, we would know this future due consists of tuition, probably plus some housing and maybe meal plan charges as well. So future due, of course, means that it is not currently due. If it was past the due date, it would be in the due now section. So that would mean that we would need you to make a payment on those fees. So you can actually see the individual fees by going over here on the left. So this box is circling a selection on a drop-down menu called charges due. If you select charges due and then hit this double arrow on the right, you'll be able to see all of the fees individually and when they're due. So this is only going to show you if it's something that is due now or if it's due in the future. Because if you've already paid it, you're going to have to switch to a different function called account activity. So this box is highlighting that specific function. It's another drop-down menu that you'll be able to see here. It shows you everything. So it's kind of like a catalog of all the events happening on your account financially. So it'll be financial aid that has been dispersed, changed in some way, charges that are put on your account, charges that have been paid, like all that stuff is going to be there, refunds included. So it's very powerful tool, but it can be a little bit overwhelming if you just want to see what you owe. You only need to look at that charges due. But if you kind of want to see what happened, maybe you weren't sure if you got your disbursement or something, you could see that in account activity. You would actually be able to see if your aid went to a charge there. So it's very, very useful. Um, some of the options that you have for financial aid, like I had said previously, you want to make sure that you do the FAFSA. That is the way that you can really, start your journey on guaranteeing and securing some funds to cover those balances. So if you plan on having your housing covered by financial aid, then you are going to have to accept the loans that are offered to you. So there's a couple different types of loans that will be offered to you potentially by default. One would be the subsidized loan, and the other would be the unsubsidized loan. So the subsidized loan essentially has its interest subsidized while you're in school. So with any loan that you take out while you're in school, you can defer making payments until 6 months after you graduate. But with the subsidized loan, it won't accrue interest while you're in school, and the unsubsidized loan will. So those are just the two differences between them. If you wanted to take out like the minimum amount in loans, or just like a little bit in loans to cover some charges, we always, of course, recommend you taking out the subsidized first because it's a need-based loan and it doesn't accrue interest while you're in school. So it's very nice. Another loan option that you would have is the Parent Plus loan. So that loan is actually not going to be visible on your student center by default. You have to actually apply for it on studentaid.gov, which is the same website that you did your FAFSA on. So there is a section on studentaid.gov about loans, and you'll be able to see the Parent Plus loan option there. And there's that QR code in the corner there, which shows you the different types of financial aid. So our website has all of these resources, but this is just sort of a succinct way for me to kind of describe those loans, the differences between them, and then what you'll see. So again, if you just fill out the FAFSA, you might see the subsidized and the unsubsidized loan. But if you want that Parent Plus loan to cover the rest of your expenses, you are going to have to apply on studentaid.gov. So if you don't plan on taking out loans, the maximum amount that you would receive in financial aid would not be enough to cover your balance innately. You are going to have to consider alternative funding. You may have a few months covered just by your grants alone. But again, we have these tools so you can see what your aid is and then what your fees are and then what the difference is going to be. And I'll talk a little bit about that later as well. So for alternative loans, which I haven't talked about yet, these are loans that you can choose to take out if you've exhausted all of your other federal options. Because those three loans that I previously mentioned, the subsidized loan, the unsubsidized loan, and the Parent Plus loan, those are all federal loans, which means they're offered from the federal government. Alternative loans, kind of the world is your oyster. They're considered private loans, so you can apply for what you need. But it is important to note that, the interest rates for those are a little bit higher. But if you do need to absolutely be covered, it is something that is worth looking into. That QR code on the previous slide here does have the information about Parent Plus loans as well, or sorry, alternative loans. So if you're interested in an alternative loan slash private loan, then you would definitely want to check out that as well. So the process for this is a little bit different because they are not federal. So the full turnaround time for applying for a private loan and receiving it is around 3 to 4 weeks. So we ask that you kind of figure out your financial situation early on. That way, you're not having to, wait for this loan to get certified because the process is essentially you submitting the application, and then we receive the certification request, and then we certify it, and then the loan gets originated. But that process just does take a bit of time. So please make sure that, you're thinking about this stuff beforehand and then seeing if this is a path that you would need to go down. And this is something that's new. I teased that it was going to be a little bit different this financial aid year than previous ones. There's something happening new to loans specifically. It's called the schedule of reductions. So previously, financial aid would have been reduced. Like if you were getting a Pell Grant, for example, it would be reduced based on the amount of units you're taking. So if you're not full time, you would receive less than 100% of your Pell Grant. Pell Grant. Now, because of schedule of reductions, this is also going to affect those direct loans as well. So if you're taking less than 12 units, your direct loans are going to be affected. If you are in 12 units, which is the full-time amount for undergraduate students, then you will be receiving 100% of what's offered to you, essentially, if you choose to accept those loans. So, just as an example here, if let's say your annual loan eligibility is 6,500, and you're only taking 9 units, which is 75% of full time, your eligibility is going to be curbed a little bit. So you'd see that you're getting a little bit less. So another thing that's important to note is that waitlisted units actually do not count as being enrolled in credit. So if this changes down the line, so if within the first few weeks, people are switching around classes, people are kind of trying to figure these things out. It's okay if you're moving things around. You just want to make sure that you're doing that, or that you know exactly how many classes you're going to be in as soon as possible, so that you know, okay, I'm only going to take 9 units. What's my loan amount going to look like? And just a little bit about how disbursement works. So nobody's aid for the 26-27 year has gone out yet. The first disbursement date for the year is going to be August 19th. When a disbursement happens, the awards on your account are uh, they automatically go towards those fees that you see on your account. So if you're getting financial aid right now, you'll still see your balance because your aid hasn't actually been applied to that balance yet. So it happens all at once, and it has to go towards the fees on your account. And then afterwards, if you have remaining, financial aid, let's say you weren't living on campus and you had enough aid that went over the amount that you owed to the school, you would get a refund for that amount. After that first disbursement date, August 19th, every Wednesday is a disbursement date. So if you're expecting aid to go out and you didn't see that happen, you checked your account activity and maybe you didn't actually get that disbursement, you'd want to check your to-do list and see if there's something that you need to do because you may have been submitted for verification, or there may be a form that you need to fill out or something like that. And we want to make sure that you don't have any issues, in your student center with your financial aid, so that you can actually expect your disbursement and then get it as expected. And there is a QR code to the guide of how this works as well. You would just want to know that if you're expecting aid and a Wednesday passes and then your balance doesn't change, there might be a problem. So it's worth looking into. It's also worth noting students who are living on campus, just because the nature of the fees that come with housing and meal plans, chances are you will probably not get a refund unless you are taking out enough in loans to cover your full balance and then maybe some excess as well. So this is how you're going to know if you're covered or not. So in your student center, um, you should be able to see the section that shows your account summary. So it's in that finances section that we were talking about before. I believe it would say either view account or account inquiry. And you'll see over here on the left where it says fall 25. I know of the upcoming year is going to be 26, but the first column is going to show your charges. So this student they owe 12,000 in charges, and their pending aid is over here on the right, which is 15,000. So just using some basic arithmetic, we can tell that they would be fully covered. So that's a situation where, look, I owe this amount. This is how much I'm receiving. I'm probably going to be covered. That's good to go. This student, on the other hand, it is the opposite. So their charges are exceeding their amount in financial aid. So they owe almost 12,000 over here for the fall term, and then they're only going to be receiving just under 11,000. So they'll have to consider either paying for a little bit out of pocket or taking out a loan. And it actually does the math for you over here on the right. So it'll show you your due amount. So it's a very useful screen. If sometimes like things are moving and updating and stuff, so you can always, ask us if you're confused about something or don't know, why it looks like this when you should be getting aid, or maybe something hasn't shown up yet. So um, this is just a handy guide. If everything is squared away, you'll know pretty much immediately. And for this, this is something that we need to let you know like right now. The middle class scholarship it infamously takes a little bit longer to get finalized. So it's an award that's offered from the state, but it actually changes depending on the financial aid in your account. So as a result, it's not awarded until a little bit later in the semester. So if this is what your financial aid package looks like, where you're getting the Pell Grant, SEOG, Cal Grant, maybe some other awards, and then you are taking out loans, and you also see this estimated middle class scholarship, this will not be dispersed on that August 19th date that I was talking about. We're expecting the middle class scholarship to be dispersed in around October. So if you did not want to pay anything out of pocket and you just said, I'm gonna wait until my middle class scholarship goes out, you can totally do that. But it will just take a little while. So that is just something important to see. If you don't see the movement of the middle class scholarship on the first week of school, that is why. So it takes a little while to get finalized. If you end up getting a scholarship later down the line, it will be affected. So at the end of the day, if you do get some other scholarship and the middle class scholarship, you're still going to be receiving more than, if you didn't receive one or the other scholarship, but just know that it will adjust if you are receiving it and you get something else. And a little bit more about just seeing if you're covered here. Work study is a great opportunity for students to be able to work on campus and then earn money through that job. And it's kind of built like a budget. It's an award that you can't accept. So if you see work study on your account and you say that you think it would be a good idea for you to get a work study job on campus and then earn to help pay your fees, um, you want to use this QR code to go to Handshake. You can, if you're wanting to do a work study job, you can only get it through jobs that specifically say they're work study eligible, because Handshake doesn't only have work study jobs. There's also regular work on there as well. So you can choose if you want to do one or the other. But if you have work study in your account, you won't be able to earn it unless you have a work study job. So basically, the way this process goes is you see that you've received work study on your account. If you haven't received it, but you do want it, you can reach out to us, and then we can either see if you're eligible and add it for you there, or we can add you to a list of students who are waiting to see if there's work study eligibility, because sometimes that ends up being the case. But you would apply for a job on Handshake. And then if you get hired, you would email us the hiring letter. So we'll have our contact info at the end of this slide, or at the end of this presentation. But you would email us that hiring letter, and then we would accept the work study on your behalf. So that's kind of how this goes. You don't go in and accept your work study manually like you do with loans. We accept it on your behalf. So that's how that works. And then these are just a couple reminders that we think are pretty important for you to know. While tuition is due on September 21st, if you have not paid and it's time for you to register for classes for the upcoming term, if you have a balance of over $1,000 on your account, you won't be able to do so. So this is why we ask that you be really proactive about knowing if your fees are going to be paid, before it gets to that point, because the last thing you want to do is be waiting on like an alternative loan to be certified, and it's your time to register and it's going to be backed up. So it is just really important to keep that in mind. But overall, just be coming from financial aid, please, please, please do the FAFSA. It's always due on March 2nd every year. So um, this upcoming year for the new year, it's going to be March 2nd. This deadline has currently passed for 26-27, but you can still do it. So if you haven't already, go for it. But it should open up in October for the 2027-28 year. And as well as like for covering housing, your housing charges, you'd have to accept all your loans, like I had said before. Otherwise, you are most likely going to need to be paying for a little bit out of pocket, and then just being proactive, making sure that you've thought about your options up to this point and that you kind of know what your financial plan is going to look like. And then, of course, let us know if you have any questions about that as well. And then just make sure that you don't have any to-do list items on your student center. That's one of the biggest ones. If you see that you have a financial aid verification task, you won't be able to get financial aid until that's completed. So make sure that in your student center over on the right-hand side, you're completing any to-do list items that you would still have left, because those can prevent you from potentially registering for classes if you're waiting on aid to disperse to your account. And so that is pretty much the bulk of the presentation. That's it. This is our contact over here. Again, if you need to email us a work study hiring letter, you would do that at finade@sfsu.edu. And this is Housing Financials email and contact as well. And these are our phone numbers at the bottom. And so I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording right there.